Hello and welcome to a recap on my April budget. I'm sorry if you can hear the frogs in the background. They are being really loud this evening. April was a 3 paycheck month for me, and so let's take a look at how I allocated that extra income. So first of all, my husband and I both work full-time jobs, and we have a 1.5-year-old daughter. My husband and I both make six figures. This is actually the first year that my husband's made six figures, which is a pretty good income for the area that we live in. However, over the past couple of years, probably did a little bit of lifestyle inflation. And so currently we have quite a bit of debt that we're working on paying down. So let's jump into our April recap. So I like to do a zero-based budget with a lot of sinking funds for all of our variable expenses because we're not really consistent with how we spend our money, and there are some months when we will spend a whole lot in a certain category and then many months where we will spend nothing at all in those categories. So it's really hard to budget for that because it's really not planned expenses, although it could be, but it's just easier to have those sinking funds always stocked up and then ready to spend whenever we need to spend them. But we'll get into the sinking funds at the end. First, we're going to start with our income. So another thing is that I budget off of my gross income. So this is my paycheck before I pay any taxes or have any other deductions coming out. But for my husband, I budget off of what hits our joint account. And what hits our joint account is 85% of his take-home pay because he keeps the other 15% for his personal spending. I also keep 15% of my pay for personal spending. However, I track all of my expenses and the family expenses here on this one spreadsheet because that just makes it easier for me. And I don't want to have to track any of his personal spending. With 3 paychecks coming in this month, I expected to bring in $15,691.38, and I brought in about 5 cents more than that. Not really sure exactly why that is. I just probably didn't do the math right. I'm salaried, so it's pretty consistent what my paycheck is. My husband, we were expecting $5,281.08, and again, that was about 54 cents off. Again, probably just a math thing, because his paycheck's pretty consistent, although sometimes there's like some tax changes, and because I don't look at his paycheck, it's hard to tell like what's different, if it was a difference in how much taxes were taken out or some other thing that we didn't really notice. Next, we have interest, which is interest from our high yield savings account where we keep our emergency fund. That's really all we keep in there, I guess. Most of our sinking funds are kept in our checking account, so they're easily accessible. But we budgeted $26.06, and that was so that the budget would work out to zero. And we actually brought in $38.71. So that was almost $13 more than we budgeted, and that's always good to bring in extra income. Whereas if we budgeted more and brought in less, that would negatively affect our budget. We have the extra income, and so we can contribute more to our other goals. So that's really nice. Similarly, for credit card rewards, we redeemed $25 this month, and that wasn't something that we budgeted for, so that was also bonus income. We do almost all of our purchases on credit cards because we like to earn those rewards, but we always pay them off at the end of every month, so we never carry a balance, because those rewards would just cancel out if we were paying any interest on our credit cards. We didn't get any refunds this month. That was mostly just our tax refunds, which we received last month. And then for other income, we actually got a reimbursement from my husband's job. He had to travel to a far away meeting. It was like a couple hours away, or like an hour and a half. And so they reimbursed him for gas and wear and tear on his truck. And that was $66.50. So now moving on to savings. Some of these come out of my paycheck. We've really met most of our savings goals already this year. So we didn't really budget very much for savings, just what was going to come out of our paycheck. Our daughter's 529, and then Acorns, which is my after-tax brokerage account, which sometimes gets contributed to. But what came out for my retirement account was exactly what I budgeted, and that's 4% of my pay. And then for our daughter's 529, I decided, since the markets were down earlier in the month, that I would contribute $435 instead of $415. The goal for the year is to contribute $5,000, and in order to do that, every single month we would contribute $415, except one month we have to contribute a little bit more at $435, and so we made that this month since the markets were down. Next, for Acorns, as I mentioned, I have a monthly recurring contribution to Acorns, which is $5, and then I have roundups turned on, so anytime we make purchases with my credit card, it rounds up the change, and once I accumulate $5, it contributes that to my after-tax brokerage. So that happened twice this month, so we ended up contributing $15.96, so $5.96 more than what we budgeted for, which is always good when you can put a little bit extra towards savings. Next, we have the 2025 Roth IRA. We actually maxed that out this month. I think I may have mentioned this in my update. I'm not exactly sure where I left off in my update. So we only had to do $800 more to max this out. When I made my budget, I wasn't really sure if we were going to keep contributing to the Roth IRA because we are very near the income cap to be able to do that. I also realized recently that I don't think my husband can do a backdoor Roth IRA because, at least not where his Roth IRA is right now, because he has a simple IRA. That's what his job provides for him because it's a very small business. And because that's the type of account that he has, that if he wanted to contribute to a traditional IRA and then roll it over into a Roth IRA, they would assess that part of that amount being rolled over is coming from the simple IRA, and he would have to pay taxes on it. So it's not like a standard backdoor Roth where if you contribute it into the traditional and immediately convert it into a Roth, you don't really have to pay any taxes because there's basically zero gains when you're doing it immediate. But because he's had this simple IRA for 15 years or something, probably not that long, maybe like 13 years. Since he's had this simple IRA for that long, a lot of it would be gains that he would have to be paying taxes on if he were to convert it into a Roth IRA. If he were to contribute to a traditional IRA and convert it into a Roth IRA, they would assume that some of the money being converted is from his simple IRA. And there's no way to prevent it from thinking that, at least if he were to do it in the same account, which is Fidelity. So maybe I could do a backdoor Roth, but I also have the option through my employer to do a mega backdoor Roth, and I find that that is much simpler of a process because it does it automatically. I just have to check some boxes in my retirement account, and it'll automatically do that mega backdoor Roth for me. But this year we should be able to get our taxable income down below that threshold so that we don't have to do a backdoor Roth, but it is an option moving forward. Like if I get a raise next year, that would probably bump us out of the taxable bracket, and we could keep contributing to our pre-tax accounts to keep bringing that down, but we already have a large proportion of our retirement accounts in a traditional, and we'd like to have it a little bit more of a 50-50 split so that we don't have to pull everything from our taxable accounts in retirement, so that we can pull out some tax-free monies. But that's everything for our savings this month. We maxed out our HSAs earlier in the year as well. So just maxing out the Roth was the only change for April for our savings. And I guess moving forwards, we really don't have very many savings goals because we were able to max those out in the beginning of the year. I think usually we contribute to these evenly all throughout the year, but we kind of got excited with the market being down and buying everything on sale. So we contributed them a little bit earlier than we typically would have. Okay, now moving on to our fixed expenses. These are the only things that we don't do sinking funds for. My taxes, they come out of my paycheck automatically, obviously. I budgeted a little over $4,200, and that's about what came out. I think I have estimated that I pay about 27% in taxes, and this is like Social Security and Medicare and all of those taxes, not just actual federal and state taxes. So that's about exactly what I budgeted. And then I also paid life insurance through my paycheck. This gives me 3 times my salary in life insurance. And I pay that with after-tax money, I think. And then car insurance, that's $220. We pay that at the beginning of the month, so I probably already went over that in my update. For utilities, that's $260. We're on a budget billing plan, which means no matter how much electricity we use or don't use, they're going to charge us the same amount every single month for an entire year. They just increased this from $184 to $260, so we're going to be paying $260 every single month until they reevaluate next year. The reason why I basically doubled was we were really underpaying, so we owe our electric company like $800. But that's fine because they don't charge us interest on how much extra we owe them, which is also very interesting because if we overpay them and we have like a surplus in there, they will pay us interest and they will credit our account. So it always works out in our favor, whether we're underpaying or overpaying. And then since we plan on being here for a really long time, it's all gonna, even out eventually. Internet, I probably mentioned this in my update. It's $34.99. We usually pay that on like the first or second of the month. Daycare, this is for my daughter. We pay $300 every Monday for her to go to daycare. So that, I guess there are 4 Mondays in April, so that was $1,200. And then here, Acorns, this is my subscription fee for my after-tax brokerage account with Acorns. That's just $1. This is our only subscription that we have. We don't pay for any other streaming services or anything. We don't even have a TV. Okay, moving on to debt. This is the exciting part this month. First of all, we paid our mortgage at the beginning of the month. That was $2,630. That's exactly what we budgeted for because it doesn't change. Well, I guess it changed last December. No, it's changed twice. I think it went up in December because they did an escrow analysis and decided we needed to pay more. But then it went down in, I think, February when I called and got the PMI removed. So previously we had been paying private mortgage insurance because I only put 15% down on the house when I bought it. But I guess after paying for it for 3.5 years, we reached that 80% loan to value ratio. So they were able to take off the PMI, and that was actually 2 or 3 years earlier than it would have naturally fallen off. So if you're paying PMI, maybe give your mortgage company a call. See if they can evaluate what your loan to value ratio is, and see if you can get that taken off. Another option is you can get your house reappraised if you think it's gained enough value. But fortunately, we didn't have to do that because you have to like pay for an appraiser, and we didn't really want to do that. It was only like $50 a month, our PMI, but it was really nice that we got to get it taken off. Now, the most exciting part was our truck payment, but we actually ended up paying $700 less than what we originally budgeted for. And that was because we ended up contributing to the Roth IRA, which we didn't budget for. So, I mean, this is still really, really good progress. We owe less than $1,000 on our truck. We should have paid this just 2 times this month. We pay every other Monday is our basic payment of $311.07. But we've been paying extra during Transfer Tuesday. Really, everything that we can throw at it, we've been throwing at it. So basically, my entire last paycheck this month went straight to the truck payment, actually a little bit more, and all of our interest as well. So I think, yeah, we owe a little bit less than $1,000 on the truck, which I think is a pretty great milestone. And I think in the month of May, we should be able to completely pay that off. And that's going to be really exciting to not have that like $600 a month that we're paying on the truck, because that's our minimum payments, because it's quite a lot. It was like a 3-year loan, so that's why the payments were pretty high. And next we have my retirement account loan. This comes out of my paycheck. And because I got paid 3 times, that's why it's $708. Usually it's around $400, $500. And then my husband's student loans. We're just paying the minimums on those. Well, slightly a little bit extra because of a little tweak I did with our payment plan. But if we were to do the standard 10-year plan, payoff plan is $382 a month. I always find it interesting because everyone's always talking about like the income-based repayment plan. But if we had signed up for that instead of the standard plan, they would have had us paying over $1,000 a month. I mean, we would have paid them off significantly faster, but that just wasn't going to fit into our budget. So we're just doing the standard 10-year plan payment. But hopefully we can get that paid off earlier that's actually our second lowest priority. Our lowest priority is the mortgage, and then it would be the student loans, because our highest priority is the truck, and then my retirement account. Okay, now moving on to the sinking funds, which I mentioned earlier. I think I funded these in my last video, at least most of them. I usually do it after our second paycheck, which was when I did the update. So all of these were funded exactly as planned. I didn't contribute extra to any of them. At the end, I added $5.56 to the miscellaneous fund, and that was just to get the final budget to 0. I don't usually spend anything from this miscellaneous fund, but in case something comes up that I can't categorize as something else, then I'll pull it from the miscellaneous fund. But I think almost anything that I would want to buy, I have a category for. And so typically, like last year, at the end of the year, I rolled this miscellaneous fund into a fund that was really low. I think last year it was health. We'll see what it might be this year. The other difference would be the DCFSA, because this comes out of my paycheck. This is the Dependent Care Flexible Spending Account. This comes out pre-tax out of my paycheck. I contribute $5,000 over the course of the year, and then I can use that $5,000 to get reimbursed for daycare costs. So far this year, I've used it for $900 of reimbursement. But the funds have to be in there in order to get reimbursed, and they go in throughout the year. So now I have, it looks like $974.97 in there. So I'm thinking probably not in May, because May is 3 paychecks for my husband, but probably in June I will get a big payout from the DCFSA in order to help boost some of our debt payoff goals. So now let's get into our spending for the month because things were a little bit crazy. I'm going to hide these columns so that we can still see what's going on. So first of all, I think we did a lot better with spending in most of our categories. There's one category on here that's very high, but I'll go into why that is. If you've seen my daily spending log, you may already know. But we did a little bit of home spending this month. We bought chlorine for the pool. We also had to replace a hose on one of my husband's vacuums because the rabbits chewed through it. But really, it was the chlorine that was the most expensive. We spent almost $300 of that was on chlorine. We also bought some more food grade buckets, and I put those in the home category. This is for storing our bulk groceries. We buy a lot of our groceries from Azure Standard, which is organic bulk goods, I guess. We buy a lot of dried beans, a lot of grains, flour, stuff like that. And we need to store it in food grade airtight buckets because it lasts, because we don't eat like 25 pounds within a month. So we need to store it long term kind of. And so these buckets help us do that. And since we're buying more of a variety of things, we needed more buckets. So that was $60. We bought those used off of Facebook Marketplace from a local woman who makes pickles or something. Next, groceries. We did really well on groceries this month. We hardly went to the grocery store at all. There were just a few little purchases. I know we bought some frozen vegetables. Looks like we went to Wegmans quite a bit, which is always frozen vegetables. I think my husband went and they were out of broccoli. So we had to go back for broccoli. There's some other things that we pick up there as well. So that's actually really good. I also added this new column called year-to-date average because I want to know on average how much I'm spending. And to see if I'm greater than or less than the average. So far this year, we spent a lot more on home than we usually do, and that's really because we didn't really spend anything on home. And now that we're getting ready for pool season, the pool chemicals were expensive, but that should be the only time we need to buy pool chemicals for the year. Groceries, we did way better than we usually do on groceries. We had placed a few Azure Standard orders. We placed 2 so far this year, and they're about like $400 each. But we still have most of that food. Some things we run out of more quickly than others. Usually when we buy like a 5-pound bag of nuts, those are the ones that we end up using much faster than a 25-pound bag of beans. So next in our sinking fund category is car and gas, and this one we spent a lot on. My husband needed tires for his truck, and so we bought those. They turned out to be the wrong size, and so he bought a second set and returned the first set, but we're still waiting on the refund for the return. So I think I also bought gas at the beginning. Yeah, at the beginning of the month on the 10th. So $30 of that is gas and the rest of it is tires, but we should be reimbursed $668 for that first set of tires that we bought. But we also have to pay to get them mounted. He was supposed to get them mounted, I think, on Wednesday, but because they were the wrong size, the tire place was like, hey, we can't mount these because they won't fit your truck. So I think next week we'll be getting them mounted. We didn't spend anything in health. That sinking fund is still pretty negative, mostly for paying doctor's bills for my daughter from December because we didn't really think to fund that very much. We do have an HSA, but we are currently investing that instead of using it for health expenses. We're saving up all of our receipts so that one day, once our HSA has grown in value significantly, then we'll get it reimbursed so that we can get those tax-free gains. For pets, as I mentioned, I have rabbits that were pretty bad this month, chewing up the vacuum, but I still had to buy them food. They must have been very hungry. So I spent $27.55 on food for them, and that's about it. For our daughter, I didn't spend anything from her category. I did actually buy her some things. We went to the thrift store twice, but I put all of that in the clothing and personal budget down here because I also bought some things for myself. So I just like choose a category when it's something like that instead of splitting it up. And these sinking funds are all like in the same place, so it's not that big of a deal. It's just kind of for data purposes, I guess, to see what categories I spend the most in. Also, some of the things from the thrift store were kitchen stuff, and I didn't put that in home. We didn't pay for our phones this month. We pay for those annually, and I think that comes out in August. So we just keep contributing to that sinking fund all year long, and then we'll pay it using that sinking fund when it comes due. We didn't buy any gifts. Nothing is really planned. I guess Mother's Day is coming up in May, but we usually don't buy very many gifts for our family or anything. If my husband's going to buy me a Mother's Day gift, he's probably going to use his own personal spending, just like if I were to when I buy him his Father's Day gift, it will come from my own personal spending. Part of the reason is because if he's spending the joint account, I'm the one who watches that account, and so I would see anything that he bought me. So it's nice for him to have his own separate account for that reason. And then I mentioned we went to the thrift store. We actually went twice. Both times we were looking for the same things, and we ended up buying things we didn't actually need. So we kind of didn't do so well on that front. But most of the time we're not really spending frivolously. Again, we had $84 in this account that we had been building up for a long time. And so at any point we could spend that $84 without any issue because it is there and it is for personal spending. So it's not a big deal that we spent 41. We spent half of that. We spent half of that this month, but it's not a big deal because we probably won't spend it again for a long time. We didn't spend from any of our other categories this month, which is nice. Yeah, those are also categories that we don't really spend very much from. Anyway, I guess that's it for spending for the month of April. Let's take a look up at our donut charts. So we were pretty close to what we budgeted. We budgeted that we were spending a little bit more on debt and a little bit less in savings, but we ended up swapping that. We were originally planning 5% in savings, but we did almost 9% because we did max out the Roth IRA. And so that cut a little bit out of our debt payment, but not by much, by about 3%. We did get a little bit more income than we were expecting with that refund, with the credit card rewards and that refund from my husband's work for that reimbursement. So that helped with our extra debt payments. And since we're talking about debts, let's go to my debt tracker so we can see our progress that we've made this month and where we're at. So at the beginning of April, we owed $435,203.77 on our mortgage, and then at the beginning of May, before we pay our mortgage, we owe $434,286.74. So that looks like it's gone down just about $1,000, which is nice. Our mortgage payment is $2,630. So I think about $1,000 is principal, $1,000 is interest, and $600 goes to escrow, which pays our property taxes and our insurance. Although I would like to remove that because I think I want to pay property taxes and insurance directly, but I haven't done that yet. But we'll see. I think I'm waiting until we get our property tax bill because if we pay our property taxes early, we don't have to pay as much. And my mortgage company says that they pay them early, but I don't think that they do. And so I want to get that property tax discount by paying it early. So I want to be the one who makes those payments. I don't want to trust my mortgage company. Okay, so the truck, we started the month with owing $8,127.11. And this is just an estimate. I think we actually owe $966, not $943. So it looks like we're doing a little bit better than we are, but still under $1,000, very close to paying that off. That's really exciting. My retirement account loan, I owed $34,506 at the beginning of April, and then after paying it 3 times with my paychecks, just brought it down below $34,000. So making slow progress on that. That has a pretty low interest rate. I think it's 4.25%, and all of that interest is being paid back to myself. So it doesn't really hurt that much. And then student loans, similarly, we owe $33,000 after making our one payment, and it only went down about almost $300. That's good. So for our debts, we still owe just over $500,000. Soon we won't owe over $500,000, and I don't know what I'll be able to say. We owe less than $500,000. It's less exciting, I guess. It's less shocking, I would say, than saying we owe more than $500,000, but that's fine. We're making progress. I love it. And then one more thing I think I wanted to show was our annual summary, because that shows whether or not we're on track with what we budgeted. For our pie chart over here, donut chart. So far this year, we've budgeted about 49% towards debt, 10.5% towards savings. The fixed expenses and the sinking funds don't really differ from what I budget because those are fixed expenses. I contribute to my sinking funds in a pretty fixed manner, unless there was like something significant that needed to come up and I would need to throw more in one of my sinking funds. But let's see, in actuality, we've actually contributed a little bit less to our fixed expenses and sinking funds, but not by much. And savings has really been a lot more than debt, because the first 3 months we were focusing a lot on our savings, and then we only got back into the debt payments just this past month. Although I think we did throw like $3,000 at the truck in January, but so far that is how our actual annual spending is broken down. So that is everything for a recap of my April budget. Let me know how your April went. Did you stick to your budget? I really appreciate you sticking around watching to the very end. Thank you for being here.